Ethan never believed his life would take a turn this strange, this twisted, standing in the cold evening air, staring at the fragile figure before him. He felt the edges of his carefully planned life beginning to blur. The woman, worn, yet somehow familiar, looked up at him with eyes that had weathered storms he couldn't begin to imagine. It was Sophia. Years ago, her name was whispered in the hallways of Albright Industries, her face appearing in framed photographs that hung proudly in Jonathan Albright's office. Jonathan, Ethan's boss, had painted her as the perfect wife, poised, intelligent, and irreplaceable, but Sophia had vanished, leaving Jonathan to mutter vague excuses about irreconcilable differences. Rumors swirled. Some said she'd left him for another life. Others claimed she'd simply disappeared. And now, here she was, sitting on a cracked sidewalk, clutching a cardboard sign. Ethan's first instinct was pity. His second, anger. And his third, a dark idea, forming in the shadows of his mind. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for. "Fancy seeing you here," Ethan murmured, crouching down to meet her gaze. His voice carried a note of mockery, though Sophia didn't seem to notice. She sighed, brushing a strand of hair away from her face. "Do I know you?" "No," Ethan said quickly. Too quickly. He couldn't afford for her to recognize him, or worse, connect him to Jonathan. "But I know who you are." Her brow furrowed, her lips pressing into a thin line. "Then you know I'm not who I used to be." "Maybe not," Ethan replied, feigning a kindness he didn't feel. "But I think I can help you. How about a fresh start?" Sophia blinked, suspicion flickering across her face. "Why would you want to help me?" "Let's just say," Ethan said, standing and offering his hand, "I believe everyone deserves a second chance. Even you." Sophia hesitated before taking his hand, her grip firm despite her fragile appearance. Ethan turned away, his pulse quickening. As he walked, he replayed the interaction in his mind, fine-tuning the details of his plan. Jonathan Albright had ruined more lives than just his brother's. Sophia was proof of that, a living, breathing relic of the destruction Jonathan left in his wake. But now, she would be his key to vengeance. The annual company gala was only days away. Jonathan always made a grand entrance, surrounded by power and prestige, his reputation untouchable. But this time, Ethan would be holding the strings. Sophia would be his weapon, her presence a dagger aimed straight at Jonathan's carefully constructed facade. But something gnawed at Ethan as he climbed the stairs to his apartment. Sophia's eyes. There was something in them, something he couldn't quite place. Was it resilience? Or something darker? He shook the thought away. He didn't need to understand her. He just needed her to play her part. The night of the gala arrived. Ethan watched as Sophia stepped out of the car, transformed from the disheveled figure on the street into a vision of elegance. She held herself with a quiet confidence that silenced the whispers as they entered the venue. Ethan smirked. Jonathan wouldn't know what hit him. But as he glanced at Sophia, a question flickered in his mind. Was he the hunter in this game? Or the prey? What secrets is Sophia hiding? Is Ethan's plan for revenge as foolproof as he thinks? Or is he walking into a trap of his own making? If you're hooked on this story, don't miss the next installment. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more thrilling tales with jaw-dropping twists. Comment below, what do you think Sophia's next move will be? Ethan spent the next day fine-tuning his plan, meticulously crafting every detail. The annual Albright Industries Gala wasn't just any corporate event. It was Jonathan Albright's stage. The gala was where he displayed his power, his wealth, and his carefully curated image. This year, however, Ethan would ensure that image shattered. Sophia was the key. But for his plan to work, she couldn't just show up as the disheveled woman he had met on the street. She needed to be unrecognizable, a force that would command the room and make Jonathan's downfall all the more humiliating. 2 days after their initial meeting, Ethan approached Sophia again, finding her sitting in the same spot as before. This time, her eyes met his with a flicker of familiarity. "You came back," she said simply. Ethan smiled, adopting an air of sincerity. "I wasn't sure if you'd still be here." Sophia shrugged. "Where else would I go?" Ethan crouched down, his tone softening. I've been thinking about our conversation, about how you deserve a fresh start. Sophia tilted her head, studying him. You barely know me. You're right, Ethan admitted. But maybe that's a good thing. No judgments. Just an opportunity. Sophia hesitated, her expression guarded. What's the catch? No catch. Ethan lied. I have a ticket to a gala this weekend, a fancy event with influential people. It could be your chance to meet someone who can help. New beginnings, right? She laughed bitterly. I don't belong in a place like that. You can, Ethan insisted. Let me help you get ready. A dress, some shoes, you'd fit right in. Sophia's skepticism was evident, but after a long pause, she nodded. Fine, but if this is some kind of joke, it's not, Ethan interrupted. I promise. The next day, Ethan picked up Sophia and took her to a modest boutique in a quieter part of the city. As they walked in, the shopkeeper, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes, gave Sophia a once-over before greeting them warmly. We're looking for something elegant, Ethan explained, gesturing to the racks of dresses. Simple, but sophisticated. Sophia lingered near the door, visibly uncomfortable. Ethan nudged her gently. Go on. Pick something you like. Reluctantly, she began browsing the racks, her fingers brushing against the fabrics. As she selected a simple black dress, her expression shifted, part longing, part nostalgia. What do you think? She asked, holding the dress against herself. Ethan nodded. Try it on. Sophia disappeared into the changing room. Minutes later, she emerged, and Ethan's breath caught. The dress fit perfectly, accentuating her figure and giving her an air of quiet confidence. She stood taller, her posture more assured. What? Sophia asked, noticing his stare. You look incredible, Ethan said truthfully. Sophia frowned, glancing at her reflection. I don't even recognize myself. That's the point, Ethan muttered under his breath. They left the boutique with the dress, a pair of modest heels, and a clutch. Their next stop was a small salon. Sophia sat stiffly in the stylist's chair as Ethan explained the look they were going for. As the stylist worked her magic, Sophia's tension began to melt. Her hair, once tangled and lifeless, was styled into an elegant updo. A touch of makeup brought color to her cheeks and light to her eyes. By the time the stylist finished, Sophia barely recognized the woman in the mirror. This is strange, Sophia murmured, touching her hair tentatively. It's just one night, Ethan said, trying to sound reassuring. You'll do great. On the way to the gala, they stopped for dinner at a small Italian restaurant. As they sat across from each other, a silence settled between them. So, Sophia said, breaking the quiet, why are you really doing this? Ethan hesitated, masking his unease with a smile. Didn't I already tell you? Everyone deserves a second chance. She narrowed her eyes, clearly unconvinced. And you just happened to choose me? Ethan leaned back, feigning nonchalance. Let's just say you caught my attention. Maybe helping you will help me feel like I'm doing something meaningful for once. Sophia didn't respond immediately, her gaze lingering on him. I guess we'll see if you're as good as you seem, she said finally. As they left the restaurant, Ethan felt a pang of doubt. Sophia's sharpness unsettled him. Did she suspect his true motives? He shook off the thought. It didn't matter. By the time the night was over, Jonathan's humiliation would overshadow any doubts Sophia might have. The night of the gala finally arrived. Ethan arrived at Sophia's temporary accommodations to escort her to the event. When she opened the door, he was momentarily speechless. Sophia stood before him, radiating elegance and strength. The transformation was complete. But there was something else, something deeper. She wasn't just wearing the role of someone powerful. She exuded it naturally. Are you ready? Ethan asked, forcing a confident smile. Sophia nodded. I think so. Let's get this over with. As they stepped into the car, Ethan felt a mix of anticipation and unease. His plan was set, the pieces in place. But there was something about Sophia, something he couldn't quite name, that made him feel like he wasn't entirely in control of the game. Little did Ethan know, the gala wouldn't unfold the way he expected. What seemed like a straightforward plan for revenge would soon spiral into a web of secrets, lies, and revelations that would shake him to his core. The grand ballroom of the Albright Hotel sparkled with opulence, its towering chandeliers casting a golden glow over the sea of impeccably dressed guests. The air buzzed with lively conversation and the clinking of champagne glasses. For most, this was a night of networking and celebration. But for Ethan, it was the stage for his carefully plotted revenge. Sophia stepped out of the car with practiced grace, her black dress gliding elegantly over the red carpet leading to the entrance. Ethan followed closely behind, his heart racing, not with nerves, but with the anticipation of seeing Jonathan's carefully constructed world crumble. As they entered the ballroom, heads turned. Whispers rippled through the crowd, subtle but unmistakable. Who is she? She looks familiar, but I can't place her. Is that Jonathan's ex-wife? Ethan smirked. It was already beginning. Sophia moved through the room with ease, her posture regal, her presence commanding. If she felt the weight of the stairs, she didn't show it. Ethan stayed close, quietly observing as people scrambled to piece together the puzzle. Ethan, a voice called out. Sarah, a colleague from marketing, approached with a curious smile. Quite the date you've got tonight. You're full of surprises, Ethan chuckled, his tone casual. I like to keep people guessing. Sophia smiled politely, extending her hand. Sophia, she said simply. Sarah's eyes flickered with recognition but stopped short of addressing it. Well, it's a pleasure to meet you. You're turning heads tonight. That was the idea, Ethan muttered under his breath. Moments later, the murmurs around the room grew louder as Jonathan entered the ballroom. Dressed in a tailored tuxedo, he exuded the confidence and authority that had become his trademark. But as his eyes scanned the crowd and landed on Sophia, his composure faltered. For a fleeting second, Jonathan's confident demeanor cracked, replaced by disbelief. His stride slowed, and he blinked as though to confirm what he was seeing. Sophia turned, meeting his gaze head-on. Her expression was calm, almost indifferent, but her eyes gleamed with an unspoken challenge. Ethan watched from the sidelines, satisfaction coursing through him. This was the moment he had waited for, the moment Jonathan's perfect facade began to crumble. Jonathan made his way over, his usual air of dominance now tinged with unease. Sophia, he said, his voice low but firm. What are you doing here? Sophia arched an eyebrow, her tone cool. Is that how you greet an old friend? Jonathan? This isn't the place, he muttered, glancing around at the growing number of curious onlookers. I think it's the perfect place, Sophia replied smoothly. After all, everyone here loves a good story, don't they? The tension was palpable as Jonathan led Sophia and Ethan into a quieter corner of the room. His usual confidence seemed shaken, his movements stiff. What is this? Jonathan demanded, his voice sharp. Why are you here? And why are you with him? Sophia's smile was thin, her tone laced with irony. Relax. Jonathan, Ethan was kind enough to invite me. A second chance? He called it. You always used to say I had a talent for making impressions. Jonathan turned to Ethan, his expression dark. I don't know what game you're playing, but you have no idea what you're dealing with. Ethan met his gaze, his voice steady. I think I know exactly what I'm dealing with. Maybe it's time everyone else did, too. Sophia's eyes flicked between the two men, and for a moment, something unreadable crossed her face. Careful. Boys, she said softly. This could get messy. Just as Jonathan was about to respond, Sophia stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. You want to know why I'm here? Jonathan, she began, her tone measured but sharp. I'm here because for years, you've controlled the narrative. You painted me as the one who walked away, the one who couldn't handle the pressure. The air in the ballroom felt charged, as though the room itself sensed the tension that lingered just beneath the surface. Ethan stood at a distance, nursing a glass of champagne and watching as Sophia mingled with the crowd. She moved through the room with ease, her transformation complete. Heads turned, whispers followed her like a trail of smoke. She was dazzling, confident, and every bit the woman Ethan needed her to be to dismantle Jonathan's carefully constructed world. From across the room, Jonathan's gaze was fixed on Sophia, his usually composed face etched with disbelief and something Ethan couldn't quite place. Fear. Perhaps? Anger? Either way, the effect was satisfying. For the first time in years, Jonathan Albright was visibly unsettled. Ethan smirked, taking a sip from his glass. The plan was working. It wasn't long before Jonathan approached Sophia. Ethan maneuvered closer, pretending to engage in idle chatter with colleagues while keeping an ear on the conversation. "Sophia?" Jonathan's voice was low, almost a growl. "What are you doing here?" Sophia turned slowly, her expression unreadable. "Hello, Jonathan. It's been a while. I asked you a question," he snapped, his facade of charm slipping for just a moment. "How did you get in here?" Sophia tilted her head, a faint smile playing on her lips. "I was invited." "Invited?" Jonathan repeated, incredulous. His eyes darted around the room before settling on Ethan. Recognition dawned, and his expression darkened. "You," he muttered, striding toward Ethan. Ethan feigned surprise. "Jonathan, enjoying the gala?" "Don't play coy," Jonathan hissed. "What are you trying to pull? Do you think parading my ex-wife around is some kind of joke?" Ethan's smile didn't falter. "A joke? Not at all. I thought Sophia might appreciate a chance to reconnect with old acquaintances. And judging by the attention she's getting, I was right." Jonathan's jaw tightened, his hand curling into a fist at his side. "You've crossed a line." "Ethan, have I?" Ethan asked innocently. "Or is this just the truth catching up to you?" Before Jonathan could respond, a ripple of whispers spread through the crowd. Someone had drawn everyone's attention: Sophia. She stood near the center of the room, holding a glass of champagne, her voice carrying over the hum of conversation. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her tone light but commanding. "I'd like to say a few words, if I may." Ethan's heart raced. This wasn't part of the plan. "As some of you might know," Sophia continued, her gaze sweeping across the room, "I'm Sophia Albright, or at least, I was. Once upon a time, I stood beside the man who built this company." She gestured toward Jonathan, whose face was a mask of fury. "But life, as it often does, took unexpected turns," she said. "And while Jonathan has continued to thrive, I've had the privilege of experiencing life from a very different perspective." The room was silent, every eye on Sophia. "I won't go into details," she said, her tone softening. "But let's just say, losing everything teaches you a lot about what truly matters." There was a pause, and then she looked directly at Jonathan. "I'm here tonight not to cause trouble, but to remind you and everyone else that success means nothing if you lose sight of humanity along the way." The crowd erupted into polite applause, though the atmosphere felt heavy with tension. Ethan approached Sophia as the applause died down, his expression a mix of awe and confusion. "What was that?" he whispered. Sophia smiled faintly. "You wanted a scene, didn't you? I gave them one." Before Ethan could respond, Jonathan appeared, his face a storm cloud. "Enough," he growled. "Sophia, we need to talk." "Now?" Sophia hesitated, then nodded. "Fine, let's talk." Ethan followed as they retreated to a quiet corner of the ballroom. He couldn't hear every word, but their body language told the story. Jonathan's frustration, Sophia's defiance. Then, the bombshell dropped. "You knew this would happen, didn't you?" Jonathan accused, his voice loud enough for Ethan to catch. "You've been planning this for years. You're still the same manipulative." "Careful, Jonathan," Sophia interrupted, her voice like ice. "You don't want to tell him everything, do you?" Jonathan froze, glancing at Ethan. "What's going on?" Ethan demanded, stepping closer. "What are you hiding?" Sophia turned to Ethan, her expression unreadable. "You think you're the only one who's been wronged by Jonathan? I've been playing this game longer than you can imagine." Ethan's heart sank. "What are you talking about?" Jonathan's laugh was bitter. "She's using you, Ethan, just like she used me." Sophia stepped forward, her gaze steady. "Jonathan destroyed lives to build his empire. Your brother wasn't the first, Ethan, and he wouldn't have been the last. I was the only one who could stop him, so I did what I had to." Jonathan sneered, And how did that work out for you? Living on the street, waiting for someone gullible enough to buy your sob story? Sophia ignored him, focusing on Ethan. You were my way back in. I needed someone with access, someone desperate enough to help me without asking too many questions. Ethan stared at her, his mind racing. So all of this letting me help you? Coming here tonight, it was all a setup? Yes, Sophia said bluntly. But it's not what you think. I'm not here to humiliate Jonathan. I'm here to take back what's mine. What's yours? Ethan echoed. Sophia's smile was razor sharp. Half of everything. And I'm not leaving without it. Ethan felt the weight of her words settle over him like a crushing wave. Everything he'd done, every step of his plan, it had been part of hers all along. I trusted you, he said, his voice shaking. Sophia's expression softened. I never lied about who Jonathan is. Ethan, and I didn't lie about your brother. You deserve justice. But sometimes, to take down a monster, you have to become one. Ethan shook his head, stepping back. I'm not like you. I'm nothing like either of you. Jonathan smirked. Well, that makes one of us. Without another word, Ethan turned and walked away, the weight of betrayal pressing heavily on his chest. Ethan stormed out of the ballroom, the chatter of the party fading into the background as his mind reeled. The betrayal cut deeper than he expected. Not just Sophia's manipulation, but the realization that he'd been so blinded by his hatred for Jonathan that he'd allowed himself to be used. He had thought himself the puppet master, but he'd been the puppet all along. Out in the cool night air, Ethan paused to catch his breath. His reflection in the building's glass window stared back at him, disheveled, angry, and lost. This wasn't the person he wanted to be. The memories of his brother Daniel flashed in his mind. Daniel's laugh, his encouragement, his untimely downfall. Ethan clenched his fists, the weight of his brother's tragedy mixing with his guilt. Would Daniel have wanted him to sink to this level? A voice interrupted his thoughts. Ethan. He turned to see Sophia standing behind him, her elegant facade cracking under the dim light. Her confidence from earlier seemed to have drained away, leaving behind someone tired and vulnerable. What do you want? Ethan asked, his tone sharp. Sophia hesitated, then took a step closer. I didn't lie about everything. I know I've used you, but you're not wrong about Jonathan. He's destroyed lives, and he'll keep doing it unless someone stops him. Ethan shook his head. And you think you're the hero in this story? You're just as bad as he is. You've manipulated me, just like he manipulated my brother. Sophia's eyes softened. I'm sorry. Ethan, I truly am. But sometimes, to bring down someone like Jonathan, you have to play their game. Before Ethan could respond, Jonathan emerged from the shadows, his towering figure imposing even under the streetlights. You two make quite the pair, Jonathan said, his voice dripping with disdain. Both so eager to see me fall, yet neither of you can do it without stooping to my level. Ethan glared at him. You ruined my brother's life. Don't pretend you're the victim here. Jonathan's expression shifted, a hint of something almost human flickering in his eyes. Your brother wasn't innocent. Ethan, he made mistakes. Big ones. I didn't destroy him, he destroyed himself. That's a lie, Ethan snapped. Is it? Jonathan countered. Do you even know the full story? Or have you been clinging to your anger because it's easier than facing the truth? Ethan's fists clenched. But before he could respond, Sophia interjected. You can try to twist this however you want. Jonathan, she said coldly, but you've left a trail of destruction, and you know it. It's only a matter of time before it all catches up to you. Jonathan smirked. And what do you plan to do? Sophia? Take me down with a sob story in a charity case? He turned to Ethan, his gaze piercing. You think she's on your side? She's just using you as a pawn in her game. She always has. The weight of their words hung in the air, and for the first time, Ethan saw the situation clearly. Jonathan and Sophia were locked in a battle, each just as ruthless as the other, and he was caught in the middle, a tool for their agendas. But he didn't have to be. I'm done, Ethan said, his voice steady. Jonathan raised an eyebrow. Done with what? All of this, Ethan continued. The lies, the manipulation, the revenge. None of it will bring my brother back. and none of it will make me the person he would have wanted me to be." Sophia's expression shifted to one of regret. "Ethan? Wait, no," Ethan cut her off. "I'm not playing your games anymore. Either of you. If you want to destroy each other, go ahead, but I'm walking away." With that, Ethan turned and walked away, leaving Sophia and Jonathan behind. As Ethan disappeared into the night, Sophia turned to Jonathan, her demeanor shifting. The vulnerability she had shown moments earlier was gone, replaced by cold calculation. "Well," she said, a smirk curling at the corners of her lips. "That went better than expected." Jonathan's expression darkened. "You always did know how to play people, Sophia." She shrugged. "And you always underestimated me. You think this is over?" Jonathan asked, stepping closer. Sophia's smile widened. "Oh, Jonathan, this is just the beginning. You'll see." Jonathan watched her leave, his mind racing. Sophia had always been dangerous, but now, with Ethan out of the picture, she had the upper hand. For the first time in years, Jonathan felt a pang of doubt. Meanwhile, Ethan returned to his small apartment, the weight of the night pressing on him. But as he sat in the quiet darkness, a sense of clarity began to emerge. The world didn't need another Jonathan or Sophia. It needed people who could rise above the chaos, who could create change without resorting to manipulation and destruction. Ethan pulled out his laptop and began typing. He didn't know exactly what his next steps would be, but he knew one thing for sure. He was done being a pawn. This wasn't the end of his story, it was the beginning of something new. The next morning dawned clear, the chaos of the previous night feeling like a distant storm. Ethan stood by his window, a steaming cup of coffee in hand, his thoughts heavy but his resolve clearer than ever. For years, he had carried the weight of anger and vengeance, believing it would bring him closure. But standing on the precipice of revenge the night before, he'd seen the truth. Revenge didn't heal wounds, it deepened them. Ethan spent the following days rethinking his life. His career at Albright Industries felt hollow now. Tied to a world of power struggles and manipulation he no longer wanted to be part of. Instead, he turned his focus to something more meaningful. He began researching community programs and outreach initiatives, hoping to find a way to use his skills to make a difference. He didn't want to fight people like Jonathan or Sophia anymore. He wanted to build something better, something that could actually help people. One evening, as he scrolled through his laptop, he came across an idea that struck a chord, a mentorship and job training program for underprivileged youth. The more he read, the more the vision began to take shape. He imagined a space where people like his brother could get a second chance, where they wouldn't be crushed under the weight of corporate greed and manipulation. Ethan's brother, Daniel, had been a brilliant mind, a man with ideas and passion that the world had robbed too soon. This initiative, Ethan realized, could be a way to honor Daniel's memory while moving forward. Meanwhile, Sophia left the city as quietly as she had arrived. Her plan to reclaim her share of Jonathan's empire had succeeded, though it left a bitter taste in her mouth. She had gotten what she wanted, but the cost was high. For the first time in years, she felt the weight of her choices. Ethan's rejection had stung, not because it foiled her plan, but because it reminded her of what she had lost along the way. Her integrity, her humanity, and perhaps even the ability to trust anyone, including herself. Sophia boarded a train bound for nowhere in particular, unsure of what her future held. All she knew was that the person she had become wasn't who she wanted to be anymore. She resolved to find herself again, far away from Jonathan's shadow. Jonathan returned to his office, the glass walls and sprawling city view feeling colder than ever. The cracks in his empire, which had always seemed so distant, now felt closer. Sophia's reappearance had shaken him, but it was Ethan's departure that lingered in his mind. For years, he had justified his ruthless behavior as necessary for success, but now, he couldn't help but wonder if he had been wrong. Sitting alone in his corner office, Jonathan stared at the cityscape, his mind filled with questions he wasn't ready to answer. Could he change? Or had he gone too far down the path of power and manipulation? Months later, Ethan stood in front of a modest but vibrant community center. The sign above the door read, "Second Chances Initiative." Inside, A group of young people gathered for their first workshop, eager to learn skills that could open doors to brighter futures. As Ethan addressed the group, he felt a sense of purpose he hadn't known in years. He shared his story, not just of the pain and loss he had endured, but of the lessons he had learned about forgiveness, resilience, and the power of starting over. "This isn't about where you've been," Ethan told them, his voice steady. "It's about where you're going. And no matter how many times life knocks you down, you can always rise again. You're stronger than you think." Later that evening, Ethan sat alone in the empty center, the hum of the day still lingering in the air. He thought about Sophia and Jonathan and the tangled mess they had created. In some ways, he felt pity for them. They were trapped by their own ambitions, unable to see a way out. But Ethan had found his way out. He had chosen a different path, one rooted in hope and humanity rather than revenge. For the first time in years, he felt at peace. Life is full of choices, and it's easy to let anger or pain guide our decisions. But as Ethan discovered, true strength comes from letting go and building something meaningful. What do you think about Ethan's journey? Was walking away the right choice? Or should he have stayed to fight Jonathan and Sophia on their terms? If you enjoyed this story and its unexpected twists, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in Ethan's shoes? And what do you think happened to Sophia and Jonathan after Ethan walked away? Stay tuned for more stories of redemption, resilience, and the surprising turns life can take.